So today I'm fishing at Ladybower fisheries in the Peak District. I've just got out of the car and I'm just walking down the fields through the woods towards the reservoir. Ladybower Reservoir is about 500 acres, it's quite large, and 13 miles of bank, surrounded by steep edges and fields, lots of fir trees and moorland, and it's a late February day and there's a fog and a mist surrounding the reservoir, and the fir trees are just poking up into the mist. You can't quite see the top of the trees. I've just scattered a few sheep as I'm walking down, and you can hear the geese there just making their presence known. They don't really want me down here, but it's the way it's going to be. Not too much breeze. I've got the big viaduct in front of me where the A57, the road, crosses over the reservoir. I'm all set up, so I've got a 9.5 foot rod in a 7 weight, and I'm targeting some early season rainbows here. Let's get the net clipped up, ready to go. So I've got a sinking line on today. It is late winter and the water temperature is still cold, and I just feel that the fish are going to be down a bit today. So I've got the sinking line on, and I've gone for an olive coloured Fritz lure, something with a bit of flash on there just to grab the attention of these early season fish. I'll start off with a few shorter casts. So Ladybower was built, they started construction before the Second World War, and it was built as a reservoir for drinking water. I think it took around 10 years on the whole to build, and they had to pause a little bit when the war started. But they actually flooded a couple of villages. They flooded the villages, the church, and obviously relocated the inhabitants. But up until I think it was the 50s, you could actually see the church spire on low water. You know, in summer, you could see the church spire sticking out. But I think eventually it was deemed a hazard and they demolished it with explosives. The season's just opened here, and the fish at this time of year tend to be fairly close to the bank, and they're not particularly active. They're not chasing around after their food. I don't want to be retrieving my fly too quickly. I'm just going to keep it nice and steady. Plenty of geese around here flying around, and ducks. Oh, I thought that was a take then, but I think I might have just hit the bottom. I did try and have a couple of days on the pike recording for the podcast, but there was an easterly wind, and the recording was pretty bad quality and there was just no fish to be seen. I think all the roach and the bream and the stuff that the pike normally feed on was tucked away, and consequently there was no pike. It is a lovely setting here at Ladybower. As far as countryside goes, you're not going to find many finer settings for reservoir fishing in the UK. Very, very pretty with the high moorland and woodland surrounding, and just today with the mist shrouding the hills and the fir trees just poking up into the mist, it does look rather spectacular. Alright, I've just moved down the bank a bit and we'll have another little cast here. If I can untangle the line and we'll get going again. There we go. It's always quite difficult to talk and cast at the same time. It's amazing what casting does to your breathing. It kind of changes your breathing pattern, and it makes you talking slightly stunted. Oh, I'm in a tangle now. This sinking line's been on the reel all season and it's coiled up. It needs a bit of a stretch. A few casts should sort it out. There we go, it's all straightened up again now. Just wind a little bit on, I don't need that much out. So Ladybower tends to fish well from the off normally. If you can find the fish, that's the battle here. Your choice of fly this time of year I don't find massively important. You can fish natural imitations, you can fish bright lures, you'll catch on all sorts. The key is to actually find the fish and get your fly in front of them. And as the season progresses, normally it fishes very well on the dry fly. Come May, we should have some leaves on the trees, and we should have some hatches of insects, a few beetles falling in, and the fish will soon start to come up and feed on the surface, and it can fish brilliantly on a dry. And it's a shame because I think many people who fish these reservoirs just stick to lures all year. While that will work undoubtedly at this time of year. Once we get into May, June and the fish are rising, I think people really miss out sometimes by stripping lures when they could be fishing little floating beetles or lake olives or mayfly imitations. Fairly good mayfly hatch on here, although last year it didn't happen. It was very quiet in terms of rising fish last year. There just wasn't enough food on the surface to bring them up, and everyone noticed it, and it wasn't just here as well. I think from people I spoke to all over the UK, there was a distinct lack of food on the surface for the fish. Even the midge here, which you can normally rely on, wasn't hatching in the numbers it normally does, and it was a strange old year. But I remember listening to, I think it was Radio 4 in the morning, and they also mentioned that butterfly numbers were well down last year as well. We did have a very wet spring and a little bit of a cold snap, and I think it just knocked things off a bit. Right, I'm going to wind in again and keep moving. I think today what I need to do is move. All right, geese, panic ye not. There are a lot of Canada geese around here, it's getting more and more every year. And it's not so bad this time of year, but when it becomes nesting time, and they like to nest in the rocks and the crags around the little rushes, and once they're on the nest you barely see them, and you stumble across them and they rear up in front of you out of nowhere, and they don't half give you a fright when they do that. I'll just get through this little thicket here of brambles and then we'll be ready to cast again. The sun's just shining off the big cream stone viaduct over the far side of the reservoir. Very bright. Right, here's a little spot, and I've got a nice little gap in the woods behind me to put a back cast in, so we'll give it a go here. Just to get a bit of line off the reel. A few short casts to start off with, just in case there's anything in front of me, and then slowly work the fly further and further out. But I'll just let this sinking line get down a touch before I start my retrieve. A fairly slow retrieve, and put in the odd shot. Oh, and we're in. There we go. So I was just about to say we're putting the odd oh, he's off. Never mind. We're putting the odd sharper stroke in, and I put a sharper stroke in the retrieve and had a fish on. And that wasn't too far from the bank. That must have been 15 foot from the bank. But I personally wouldn't bother with a boat here at this time of year. And you do see the boat anglers early season. More often than not, they're moored up close to the bank, casting back in towards it. But each to their own, and my time to be out on a boat is when it starts to get into the warmer summer months and the fish have started to spread out and they're all over the reservoir, and you can just cover a bit more water then. Right, we're casting again. Let's just drop in another short one out and see if there's anything else there. And the sun is disappeared from here, but it's now lighting up the tops of the edges around the reservoir high up, and you see the purples and browns and oranges of the heather and the bracken and the rocky outcrop sticking out, and then below there we've got lots of woodland with the fir trees. Very pretty. I know it's a cliche, but it is one of those places where you can be out and enjoy fishing even if you're not catching. But we all do like to catch. There's a few midges starting to hatch now. 4 or 5 midges around my head, but I don't think there's going to be anything significant enough to cause a rise of fish today. I think you really need a reasonable amount of food on the surface here to get the fish rising. Slightly warmer water, so they're a bit more active and they're a bit more willing to chase. It's a strange place, this, because if you come here as I used to many years ago at the break of dawn in the 5 o'clock, 4 or 5 o'clock, it's always, more often than not, completely still. and even in the depths of winter there'll be fish rising. But as soon as the sun gets over the hill, the breeze gets up and a little bit of ripple, and it soon puts the fish down. I suspect they're feeding on very small midges and things first thing in that still water, and just that ripple is just enough to make it not worthwhile for them to come up for those midges. Some scraggy old sheep behind me. It looks like it's been sheared and then managed to break free halfway through. It's only got its neck shaved. Oh, was that a touch or was that the bottom? I suspect it was bottom. Right, let's keep on moving. Let's walk down the bank a bit more. There's a mix of different fish in here. I mean, the majority of the fish that anglers catch will be rainbow trout, which are all stocked in here, but there is also a population of wild brown trout, and they will head up the feeder streams in winter to spawn, and then post spawning they will run back down and feed in the reservoir. There's also a lot of perch, there's pike, and there's roach as well. The perch and the roach can be good fun in summer when the trout fishing's become slow on them. Hot days, if you know where to go, you can have some fun fishing for those perch, and there's some decent ones as well. A couple of pounds here and there. And there's two tactics when you bank fishing a reservoir. You can either stay in one place and hope the fish come to you cruising past, or you can go and find the fish. And I always feel at this time of year you're better off going to find the fish, because I don't think they do that much cruising. I think they tend to be pretty stationary. It's a Y-shaped reservoir, Ladybower. Imagine the letter Y with its stem and its two arms that go off, and if you look at it from above on Google Maps you can make out the shape of the Y. So it's quite thin but very long. We've got about 13 miles of bank, and it's very deep in places. It can be 120, 130 feet in the deep spots, and I think the average depth is about 95. So there's an awful lot of water. Just reading a bit of the history before I started the podcast, and it said it took 2 years to fill it. A young couple just further down the bank getting a picnic out. I wonder if they've brought anything for me. Could do with a pork pie or a cheese and pickle sandwich. And looking down into the water in front of me, it's got a slight peaty tinge to it, slight browny look to the water, which this reservoir always has. The water collects up on the moors and flows down, and by the time it gets here it has just a peaty tinge to it, as does the river that flows out. And then as you go down the river, the peaty tinge disappears, and the Derwent that flows out of the dam wall, the River Derwent, further down is fairly clear. Right, I think a couple more casts for me in this spot, and then I'm going to hop in the car and have another half an hour at the bay around the corner. I might just put a few faster retrieves in for a bit of a change for this last 5 minutes or so. I'm stripping back the fly now instead of the slow retrieve. Fishery bailiffs are motoring down the reservoir in their boat towards me. They're a nice bunch here. It's always a warm welcome, and they do go out of their way to help beginners. People that will come in just have a go. They've got tackle hire here, and they'll even show you the ropes for 10 minutes if you need to, but it's worthwhile a visit if you're in the area. Right, I'm going to wind in. We've had one on, we've lost it. I've had no more touches. And I've fished this bit of bank that I was intending to fish, so I'm going to wind in and jump in the car. It's amazing what a difference just a change of location makes. I mean, that last one there, I was really sheltered from this wind. It was almost flat calm, and it's starting to get up. And there's a stream that comes in about 50 yards down the bank, and that often holds a fish or two. So I think that's my next destination after fishing this little spot out. Right, let's have a walk up to this stream. I know also there's quite a few freshwater shrimp around here, because I did a little YouTube video a couple of years ago on fishing natural patterns in reservoirs, and I found a wealth of shrimp, and they tend to live under all this woody debris that comes in and gets lodged into the mud, and if you just lift up the woody debris you'll find lots of freshwater shrimp in this spot. And I'm sure some of the fish that have been living in here for a few years will home into these natural food sources, and it can be very productive fishing natural patterns in these big reservoirs. Beetles as well, they work especially well here. If you get out and just in a boat and just drift a beetle pattern under the trees near the banks, when there's natural beetles falling in, you can have some cracking days fishing. Right, we've just come up to this stream now, so let's have a cast or two off here. Oh, we had a touch then, that was definitely a take. Unmistakable. Alright, let's drop it back out there. That's promising. And that was a slightly quick retrieve, and again it must have only been 15 feet from the bank at the most. Oh, and another take. You little buggers. Nipping at the fly. They're following it and nipping it. Never fails to excite you though. I've been fishing for just shy of 30 years now, and it's all about the take, that moment of connection between you and the fish. It comes out of nowhere, and it's like a jolt of electricity up the line and through the rod into your arms, and really makes your heart race. Oh, we're in. We're actually in. There we are. Right, let's try and keep this fella on. Keep that rod up, keep it bent. I'm on the reel now, so I can play it on the reel. Feels a reasonable fish. And he's in the net. Yeah, it's a lovely fish. Full fins. Say about 2 pounds. There we go. Beauty. Right, let's pop him back. Off he goes. Excellent. Yeah, we're done. Well, thank you so much for listening again. As ever, if you want more information about fly fishing coaching in the Peak District, the website is peaksflyfishing.com, or our flies that we sell online at shop.peaksflyfishing.com. And since it's my podcast, I have no shame in plugging the fact I've got a new book out called Fly Fishing for Complete Beginners. It's written for complete novices. You can get that on Amazon if you just search for Fly Fishing for Complete Beginners, and it's available for Kindle or paperback. Thank you. Bye bye.